Good evening, everyone. I'll go ahead and gavel in now. Welcome to the May 27, 2026 meeting of the Tampa Heights Civic Association. My name is Rick Fernandez. It's my privilege to serve as chair of the board and president of the association. So welcome to our living room. A couple of matters on introduction. First of all, I don't think I really have to say this looking at the crowd that I've got in front of me, but I'll mention it anyway, given our history. If you didn't notice it as you came in, we are posted as a no weapons zone. So if you're strapped, please excuse yourself and put your weapon back in your car and come on back in and have a lemonade, all right? Zoom protocol. We have two mics up here and we have two audiences. We do have usually folks on Zoom. I don't know how many or if anybody is on Zoom tonight, but we do have a puck here at the podium for them. And then we have this mic here for the folks in the room. If you're at the podium and you're speaking to the group, please remember that you have two audiences. And most importantly, if you're taking questions from the room, please repeat the question or at least summarize it so the people back home will be able to hear it. They will not be able to hear questions coming from the room. Our audio just isn't that good. All right. So, and I'll remind you, but this happens every meeting. Just do your best you can to communicate to the folks at home what you're talking about before you begin your answer. A couple of real quick announcements. If you saw our meeting announcement for tonight, you may have seen a version that mentioned Parks and Rec and code enforcement representatives. We had intended, they had intended to be here. We had intended to host them. The reason being that there have been some complaints that have circulated out of folks living around the perimeter of Robles Park about activity in the park and in the surrounding area, in particular on Elmore, adjacent to the sound wall there, and along Emily. Apparently there is a house on Emily that has been taken over by squatters, and they were living there for some time. They've been trespassed and removed, but they've decided to move themselves into the park. And I guess they're camping in the park now, and that's creating some issues for the folks that are living in that area. Tom Murphy, one of our neighbors and a friend of mine, made an inquiry of neighborhood engagement or neighborhood enforcement, whatever they're called now. And that got the ball rolling as far as them coming to speak with us. However, they, meaning the city, those two departments, did not communicate with the Robles Park neighborhood about getting those folks over here so we'd have the right people in the room. So to avoid that disconnect, we're going to try to reschedule them for next month. So if you live around Robles Park, be aware. There's going to be some conversation around that. If you know anything about it and you want to share with me, I'd be happy to hear it. But hopefully we'll be able to get that set up for next month. Tonight we have two speakers. Alan Clendenin, sitting right here in the front row, who is a frequent guest here at the Tonight Show, honorary member of the association and chair of the Tampa City Council, as I'm sure all of you know. Alan, when he got wind of the fact that we were going to be having a mobility moment here tonight with Brandon Campbell as our main speaker, he offered through his office to come in and say a few words, and I was very happy to accept that offer. So Alan's here to speak to us. He'll spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes. That's up to you. You've got your podium, you've got your time, and then he'll be able to take whatever Q&A you may have. And then following that, Brandon Campbell, who is now officially the director of the mobility department for the city of Tampa, is sitting right here in the front row. He too has been here a couple of times in the past, but the first time as the director, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Vic Bidet was the director last time that he came up. You may have been here then, but he was the honcho, as it were. So Brandon will be here talking about our mobility issues, and we certainly have a few of them in Tampa Heights. Hopefully, whatever he has to say will also generate some questions from the audience. So with all that said, Alan, I think the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure being back here. This actually is my now my stomping ground for association meetings. I've come here probably 3 times more than any other association. Just don't tell anybody else that you guys are my favorite. But part of the reason it's my favorite is because you're in kind of ground zero for everything that's happening in the city of Tampa. Tampa Heights is a great example of what a city can do in urban development, historic preservation, and really recreating itself still while maintaining the charm, character, and livability that existed here and coexist with development. And it's one of the, and Rick did highlight, I wanted to be here tonight because one, I'm a transportation advocate, obviously. Although I'm chair of Tampa City Council and I've been a strong advocate of transportation and repaving our roads as a member of City Council, I also serve on the HART board. I serve with Brandon Campbell on the Historic Streetcar board, and I serve on the TPO, which Rick serves on our Citizen Advisory Committee for. So I have a lot of fingers in the transportation pie, and I'm dedicated, and I'm a retired air traffic controller. So, that type of, transportation's kind of in my blood and bred into me. But it's exciting time. One, it's exciting time to be in the city of Tampa as general, but it's even more exciting to be part of our urban core. There are so many things that are happening here, and I'm not going to talk in detail about any of them because our subject matter expert, my good friend Brandon Campbell, is here tonight. He has all the nitty gritty details about what is happening around your neighborhoods. As I've spoken when we came here before, I don't know if you know, but a few years ago I said, we're going to run a streetcar through your neighborhood. And a lot of people said, yeah, sure, right. We've heard that before. I think Brandon will tell you where we are with that and, what you can expect and, what we're looking at. But there's other things that are happening. If you've been paying attention, we have a new airport director. One of his key agendas coincides with Brandon and my agenda, and that is another type of transportation between the airport and downtown that we can build on. And that's become a priority. And I think Brandon will hit on that as well. There's a lot of things. It's not technically Tampa Heights, but it's going to have a big impact on you all. And that is North Downtown. We have a lot of exciting things happening in North Town with Ashley and some development, and some other plans that we have for there. And I think that's something they'll hit on. That being said, I'm available for questions and answers if anybody has any questions and answers, but I really would love to hand this off to Brandon Campbell because he's the guy with all the answers. And he's again, I couldn't ask for a better partner in the administration and in mobility than Brandon and his coworker Adam. They're great people. They're very dedicated, and he's a true believer as well. So Brandon, can I hand this off to you? And I'm not leaving it, so we do Q&A after he talks, okay?
All right, well, introduction was good to me. Brandon Campbell. Sorry,
Well, good evening, everyone. A quick disclaimer. I do have some slides here for reference. Some of them are going to be difficult to see, some of the details on, but I've left the electronic copy of this. You all can have a copy of it afterwards. I also have a couple of hard copies so that I'll leave those behind in case anybody wants to take a closer look. But mostly I just wanted them to serve as a basis for conversation. Rick asked me to come and talk all things mobility. So he gave me a pretty wide open agenda. And so I spent a little bit of time looking at some of the projects that we are involved in from the city's mobility department perspective that are either in your neighborhood or nearby adjacent to your neighborhood that I think will be of interest and that will have some impact on how you get around and how you get between here and downtown. So that said, we can go through these next several slides, and I'll just give you a little bit of background and an update on some things that you may be aware of, and maybe some new initiatives that you aren't quite aware of until tonight. So the first thing that I wanted to mention, again, this is actually not something that the mobility department or the city is leading. And it is a small improvement, but it certainly is an improvement in the area. And that is the reconnection of Henderson underneath I-275. Alongside the apartment complex that's actually being built across the interstate called Legacy Heights. This is something that we've worked with FDOT on, as well as, of course, the developer. And you'll see a sort of purplish color there. And the straight east-west connection there, first of all, everything in purple is what the city will maintain at the end of this. and everything in orange is the area of FDOT maintenance. And that's a delineation that may not matter too much to you here and now, but it shows just from an outline perspective, the east-west connection there on the north side of Henderson will be a straight shot sidewalk underneath the interstate. And then that sort of dog leg that actually comes in between the northbound and southbound lanes is the roadway connection that comes down and becomes a right in, right out entry and exit underneath the interstate. I know that Henderson on the west side of I-275 has an additional area that's been disconnected. That's a right-of-way vacation through the housing development there that was made many years ago. There is a potential future where that gets redeveloped and the next phase of reconnection comes forth. But I think this is a good example of where we've been able to work with the developer and at least make a next sort of incremental improvement, take the next bite at that apple. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the West River Network build project. So you all probably have seen some of this in the news. You may have seen some of the construction ongoing. I was going to talk a little about the segments that are on this side of the river, which would be segment 5, the Columbus Drive segment, and segment 6, which is the connection down through Ridgewood Park. When all is said and done, we'll have a loop of the Riverwalk system and connect all the way down to Bayshore as well. So you'll have an active transportation connection throughout downtown and on the west side of the river in the West Tampa area as well. But to focus in a little bit on the segments in question. So Columbus Drive, we are building a cycle track across the bridge. There will be one less driving lane, but there will be a protected connection between the east and west sides of the river. And we are working with Hillsborough County. You may all know that Columbus is owned and maintained by Hillsborough County. They are providing some of the funding for this project. Basically, what they are providing is the amount that they would have spent on the resurfacing of those segment limits in between Boulevard and I can't remember where the east side is. I know it goes past Ridgewood Park. Oh, it goes from Boulevard to Rome. Sorry. So they are funding part of it because they otherwise would have done some maintenance there. But the amenities that we are bringing with this project are a step above. So it is a true funding partnership between us, the federal government through the grant that were awarded, and Hillsborough County. Next, please. So segment 6 is the Ridgewood Park connection. That is under construction right now, and it actually will come down through Ridgewood Park and connect to the existing east side Riverwalk in the Armature Works area. They've begun construction on the south side. It goes up and comes up to the roadway up by the roundabout there at Boulevard and Palm, and then comes up to Ross and cuts across. So you'll see. We've been out there a couple of times during construction, some for some media engagement and some just to observe what was going on. There's a ton of demand. People are already using that area to get to and from the Riverwalk and into Ridgewood Park and presumably areas beyond. I didn't follow them. And so we know that there is existing usage there, and we know that there's latent demand that is going to be unlocked once that project is done. I did have on that first slide with the different segments, the completion dates for each of those segments 1 through 6. All of those should be complete by this time next year, substantially complete. You might have a little cleanup and project closeout activities to do, but those should be usable by this time next year. Yes.
Sorry. Into each section.
It's fine by me. Fine by me. Yeah.
Back on segment 6 there, Robles when the public underwent development, and I still have never got a clear question. Are any improvements going to be made to the bridge? So now that the public is there, there's really, it's pretty easy for bikes and stores to call it 5 and lodge.
So that's not part of this grant project, but I think this will partly be germane to the next topic as well. But so with the offer transportation surtax, we all know that that passed. It gathered a lot of money, and what we're ending up with is a $21 million allocation that is dedicated towards 7 different segments across the city that were told to us. We did not select those. The legislature told us what we were going to apply those for. Boulevard is that area of Boulevard is one of those, and so that is under design right now. The bridge itself does not need to be resurfaced, but as we're going through there, we may have an opportunity to reconfigure the striping. So that's on our radar. It's not part of the West River Build project, but it is on our radar for a potential improvement. Anything else on that? Yes.
So just real quick, so the plan to connect the existing visible to the east bank,
Yes.
all the way out to Glenn Road, will you have health components or?
Yes. So you want?
We can repeat the question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. So the question was, will we have areas to connect between east and west throughout the length of the Riverwalk? I think if I can paraphrase that correctly. If you can go back to the map. So, yeah, there. So there is a primary connection on the north end on Columbus and then through Ridgewood Park that directly connects back to the existing Riverwalk. We have some active connections at our crossings across the river, particularly Cass. We've got the what we call the quick build cycle track there. Brorine is not part of this project. We have some preliminary ideas for some potential connection there with, Brorine right now has 4 lanes coming across. It splits into 2 to continue, 2 of them to continue westbound and 2 of them to go down Bayshore. That decision point it can be a little bit confusing to motorists, and it's not a great place to cross the river as a cyclist or a pedestrian. So there's an opportunity there. Again, like there will be opportunities for us to make incremental improvements to the whole network once we're all done with this. But some of these things we did not fit into the scope of this overall project, and we just know, hey, we'll have to revisit them at some point, or we'll have an opportunity to revisit them. I will also point out, sometimes this gets asked. You might notice between segment 1 and segment 2 on the west side of the river, the south end of the project, you see there's a gap where our project's not touching. There are a couple of developments, maybe I shouldn't use the word developments. There are a couple of things going on there that are going to help close that gap. The first being the related group is redeveloping immediately south of Kennedy Boulevard, and they have committed as part of that redevelopment to build the overwater pedestrian bridge that goes underneath Kennedy and connects into Plant Park. South of there is an existing piece that's already been built by the Arabelle, I think it's called, the apartment complex that is that you already have control of. So because that was not quite finalized, couldn't quite fit that in. So we're anticipating a little bit of a gap there at the end of this project. As I understand it, the related groups project is about a year behind ours, but it is forthcoming, and that also builds us a little bit of time to finish that WFLA segment. Somebody else had another question, but I don't know who it was. Yes.
With the Ridgewood Park segment, is it just going to be restriping Ridgewood, or is it going to be building like a sidewalk going up that center?
It is actually constructing a walkway through that center park. So part of it is already built, and I'm not sure, I don't have a good mental map of like what was existing and what is a gap that we're filling in, but we are filling those gaps.
South end, there's like a part of the trail.
Right. Yeah. So this is our opportunity to complete something that clearly was envisioned at some point in the past and begun, but not quite finished.
Brandon, before you go too far downstream, could you repeat that question?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So I'll try not to do that again. So the question was, is the Ridgewood Park segment going to be restriping on the street or building the walkway in the park itself? Were there any other questions about the Riverwalk?
One where you should pull out this bridge, you said that they're network that just to one lane. I'm concerned there's so much traffic there. How is that going to not exacerbate the traffic congestion?
Sure. No, that's a question. The question was, I got it this time. The question was, with a reduction in lanes across Columbus, how will that continue to handle the traffic? And part of that answer is that a 4-lane undivided cross-section roadway just inherently has challenges with turning vehicles. So it doesn't, I would say it does not operate quite as efficiently as, say, like, it doesn't double the capacity from a 2-lane roadway. Does that make sense? So the left-turning vehicles, so left-turning vehicles always will back up, traffic that's trying to get around. Of course, they don't do that on the bridge itself. I know that. Where we find the efficiency loss, where it gets bogged down in that type of a cross-section, is at intersections. So we will, for the most part, continue to have like turn lanes at key intersections where they're needed, so that we're not having the issue of one left turner just backs up everybody while all the oncoming traffic comes through. So we'll have some.
I'm sorry, that's been the experience of what I've seen so far, especially if you look at Tampa Street, Florida, where they're turning on the top.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a nightmare for traffic congestion.
Sure.
And that all started once they narrowed the lanes. I see very few people riding their bikes there, and I'm just concerned that more and more of these lanes going from 2 to 4. Causing traffic, road rage, more pollution going into the atmosphere because the cars have to flash. So just well-intentioned, but the ramifications.
I understand the concerns, and I mean, just generally speaking, we've seen some pushback on our lane repurposing projects across the board. We're trying to be very mindful about the public engagement process there. Another project I'll talk about here in just a moment is the first that we have initiated under new legislation. Excuse me, new legislation that was passed in 2024 that builds in a 180-day process between the public engagement and the final design. And actually, there are some aspects of that that are good because they allow us to be mindful about public engagement. Some aspects of it seem like they're, a bit of a delay in trying to give people, a chance to poke holes in something that we think is solid. In any case, that's really the way public engagement works. So we're happy to talk to people who have concerns about any given aspect of one of our projects.
Are you okay to continue taking questions midstream?
Sure, yeah.
All right, okay. Ari?
I don't feel like it's congested, but I do feel like it's unsafe because there's something about the angles of it, the turns, and the degree of the turns that make you feel a little unstable on the road. And it makes it, I don't feel like it's on mirror, but they feel mirror. Is that correct with this?
You're asking me a question about the lane width and how that's going to be considered in the project. That's maybe a level of detail in the design that I'd have to follow up on. So I'm sorry I don't have that right at my disposal.
Sheldon?
I got a question. Which side are they putting one lane? Westbound?
It'll be one lane in each direction. Columbus, so the question was how will the lane configuration come across the bridge? Can you pull that slide back up? It is, I think, the next one. So you can see it's, again, the visuals may not be super easy with the details, But in the picture on the bottom right, you see this is the cycle track is on the south side of the bridge. It is two-way. And then immediately north of that is one eastbound lane. And then immediately north of that, we have both a westbound left turn lane and a westbound through lane. So again, yeah, so it'll be generally a two-lane configuration, but there are opportunities for turn lanes.
I had a question on when you do make comparison. I'm not even sure if it's the city or FDOT, but the detour signs and all the signs are not current. I mean, there'll be a sign that says it's a detour up for maybe 2 to 3 months after it's been corrected. There was a sign on Columbus in the street saying the road was closed when it wasn't closed. There's a sign that I keep passing, it's on the sidewalk, but on 21st Avenue, which is Floribraska extended, and either Public to Cuba or 15th it is, it's telling you to detour to turn onto a one-way street that goes the wrong way.
Okay, so the question.
This is the most lazy.
Sure. So
I'm not sure there was a question.
well, I can give you a little.
Question. Please remove detour signs when they're no longer a detour.
So I can give you a little lay of the land there. So you asked about detour signage on projects in the area. And you did mention, you weren't sure whether it's the city or the county or FDOT, and the answer to that question is it could be any one of us. It's a perpetual struggle to get signage implemented exactly as planned, so that's one thing.
I can see not putting that, but no, these things are
Sure. So sometimes they get put in the wrong place. So that's one potential. If I can sort of describe, how we do it. So if it is a right-of-way permit on the city streets, whether it is work within the right-of-way, the construction, or even a detour off of a state or county roadway onto the city network, we would review those plans. We have right-of-way permit inspectors that can go and work with a contractor that may either implement it not per plan. Those plans are going to be signed and sealed by a professional engineer that takes a thoughtful approach to how that is planned to be implemented. There's all sorts of potential issues in the field, and whether that's an incorrect implementation, whether that's someone forgetting a sign, whether that's say a vandal moving a sign, that's probably a very small percentage of those issues, but those things do happen. We're happy to respond to any concerns and send one of our inspectors out to either verify that they've done it correctly or to ask them to make a correction. Sometimes, on top of that, people do work in the right-of-way without a permit, and we're not going to have visibility on that at the outset. If that happens, and we send a right-of-way permit inspector out there, they'll shut them down. They can't work in the right-of-way with limited exceptions, emergency work, and that sort of thing. They cannot work in the right-of-way without a right-of-way permit. That's our process to verify that what they're doing makes sense.
All right, one more question, and then let's let Brandon get back on course.
Yeah, I was just going to let Brandon, part of what you're hearing is that we've experienced a lot of construction
Absolutely.
on many streets in the neighborhood over the past, let's just say 2 years. And there's been a lot of miscommunication and lack of communication between agencies and departments that caused some major challenges. So I think that's what you're hearing. And I think it's a discussion we'd like to have as you get through to the end of this.
Sure. No, we're happy to have coordination. I will say we have some pretty noteworthy success stories with coordinating with other agencies too. Example A being shutting down the whole interstate to fly in the girders and reduce their project delivery time substantially. We worked with them to implement detour signal timing and to get people through without a months-long process of flying those girders in. We don't do it perfectly. I would never say we do it perfectly, but we do have some noteworthy successes.
Yeah, I would recommend when you have concerns like that, the easiest thing to do is we have a website, tampaconnect.com. If you go on tampaconnect.com, you can submit that, and it'll get directed to the appropriate office that handles that issue. So
Yes.
that's tampaconnect.com.
We also have a customer service line that's for mobility. It's 274-3101. It's answered 24 hours a day. Overnight, it's not my direct staff, but it is answered. So we take note and we will respond to it as best we can. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was the streetcar extension. So again, I mentioned the surtax that was passed almost 10 years ago at this point, it's hard to believe, was intended to be the city's fund source for the streetcar extension as envisioned. We underwent a project development process. We were going to extend to Palm and at the same time to convert from the historic replica streetcar to a modernized streetcar. There are some operational benefits to doing that, but there's also a significant cost to doing that. So in the years since then to now, we have rethought exactly how we're going to pursue this project. And the map that you see still shows it turning around at Palm, but we are going to extend it a little bit further. We are planning to go to Amelia and turn around. And again, we'll still be going up Florida northbound and back down Tampa southbound and reconnecting to the existing streetcar line at the Fort Brooke Garage. This is still early in the development, but we do have a consultant on board to help us through the planning and the reconceptualizing, if I can maybe make up a word, of how this project is going to be pursued. It will take a while for us to get it through planning, design, and construction. I would say, hopefully Chairman Clendenin doesn't throw anything at me, but I would say 5 years is a pretty fast pace for a project of this magnitude. It's going to be it is going to be a $200 million project. The Federal Transit Administration does have a grant program where they fund about half of the cost of a project like this. And until recently, the state FDOT had a match for 50% of the remaining. That funding is not in place for us now, but we have a good relationship with Secretary Hall, and he is confident that if and when things can, loosen up a little bit with some of those in the loop, that they'll be able to fund their portion of it. We still have not fully and finally identified the city match, which is going to be around $50 million. However, we are simultaneously working with a different consultant under a different grant that is called the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. And they have taken priorities from all over our region, from Pasco, from Pinellas, from Hillsborough. They took a list of over 100 projects. They distilled those down into what projects might be the best opportunity for an innovative financing package, which could mean a few different things, including some sort of public-private partnership. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but as they distilled that list down from 100 projects to their long list of 11, and as of today, their short list of 5, this is one of those projects that has a high promise for innovative financing if and when we choose to pursue that sort of a financing package for the capital improvement. It may not come to that. We may be able to find other funds for that $50 million local match, but there is a lot of interest and momentum in the extension of the streetcar, and we are going to work until we get that done. Yes, sir.
I have a question. If you extend it, are you going to have places to park your car there, or do you want to catch the streetcar?
So we don't have additional plans for parking, for like park and ride. Oh, sorry. You're gonna have to you have to signal every time. So the question was, will we add parking facilities along the line? There are some facilities, many of them are not city owned, that are adjacent to the streetcar extension. In particular, there's quite a bit of parking stock around the Armature Works area. We don't have any definitive plans to add a city parking garage along the line, but the intent would be to allow for people who are either live here or here is their destination to avoid having to park a car. So we have good parking stock on the existing line. We anticipate another parking garage, privately owned parking garage, with SPP coming online end of next year is what they're saying. There is good opportunity to park once and to visit several or distant destinations along the streetcar line.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, go to Amelia Avenue, parking around there.
Yeah, so he asked about parking around Amelia Avenue. And once you get up that far north, the land use really transitions to more single-family residential. And so I would anticipate the user base to be the neighborhood at the northern terminus, and then for the usage patterns to sort of change as you get closer to downtown. Yes?
Can I jump in there?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Hi there. Well, let me jump into this one real quick first. I think one of the things, I was a big advocate when I first got elected 3 years ago for the extension of the streetcar. So it's been a big passion project for me. And when I looked at that, what I saw was an opportunity of taking what is really a novelty for the city of Tampa now from the convention center to Ybor City, and I think that was kind of what was envisioned as a visitor transit system, to something that was actually useful for people that actually live here. And then as we extend the streetcar up into Tampa, deep into Tampa Heights, that this is something that you can literally live, especially young people can live here car-free, not have to have a vehicle. You have access to grocery stores, you have access to entertainment, restaurants, and through the entire urban core of the city of Tampa. Tampa Heights, downtown Tampa, Water Street, Gas Works, Ybor City. I mean, this could be a seismic shift. And one of the justifications for going all the way up to where it is now with Columbus could be a key route east and west for transit as well. So somebody that lives in West Tampa would be able to jump on a bus, take a bus, connect to the streetcar, come into downtown, and be able to really live and work. They don't have to worry about parking. Paying $40 for a parking spot. They might not even have. We might be able to see a point, and I'm sure it'll hit another project that is on that RIA list. You'd be able to live in the city of Tampa without a car payment, without maintenance of a car, without paying for gas, without paying for car insurance. That is what the future that I'm looking for my kids and my grandkids. So that's the politician answer.
I agree with everything else as the vision. My two questions are, would there be a greater specific discussion about who's going to be the sponsor of the project, and who's going to be managing and making sure that there's a return on investment and everything's being done and all that? And then my second follow-up is kind of related, is $50 million city match is lower than what it has been over the last 10 years of this plan, it's $65 million. I'm wondering, why is it actually lower, especially in cost of concert?
Yeah, so the first question was, has the RIA process identified sponsors for those projects? And to that end, so the projects, the massive list that they started with, that was more than 100, were projects that were already identified as some sort of priority by a planning body within the region. So it would be presumed that the sponsor of that project before would remain the sponsor of the project after. The RIA process is not pursuing the financing. It is getting those projects, it is screening those projects and identifying possibilities for those project sponsors to then latch onto and pursue. So one of the things that it looks at, the Regional Infrastructure Accelerator is run by the Build America Bureau. They also have a financing mechanism that is the TIFIA loan. I don't I'm not sure I can define the acronym, but it has favorable loan terms for these kinds of projects, and that may be a mechanism for partial or full funding of Project X, whatever the project is that was screened and said, hey, this is maybe a great opportunity. That's still a loan, so you would have to identify exactly what is going to be put in place to pay back that loan. So there are finishing touches. There are activities that will have to take place by the owning agency once that baton is passed off. So who's sponsoring the streetcar extension? That's the city. So you may know that the streetcar system, as it stands, the tracks and the stations are owned by the city. The rolling stock is owned by HART. The governance structure is that the Tampa Historic Streetcar Board maintains a contract with HART for that operation. The board is populated by HART appointees and city appointees. So there are a lot of synergies and points of contact there that we operate together. But the system, other than the vehicles, is owned by the city. So the city would be the sponsoring agency to get the extension done. Now, if there's a different arrangement that some of the decision makers want to pursue, then by all means, I would be happy to see it extended no matter who gets the credit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So your second question was, previously the local match was around $65 million, now we're saying 50. 50 is a sort of high level estimate, but the initial or the last extension study also included the modernization. Because we're planning to extend only and maintain the historic replica rolling stock, that's a significant reduction in what might otherwise be incurred cost-wise. So maybe the easy way to say it is extension now, because of cost escalations, is going to be about the same amount as extension plus modernization would have been back 8 or 10 years ago.
You questioner there in the back row, Lena.
I heard some of the discussion with the council on the release stage, and I think I heard 50 million that's needed from the city for that as well. And with the together, that's a significant difference. I don't think we would come up with one here or the other, and how those finances are going to come together.
Okay, I will just leave this one to Chairman Goodell.
And if you would, please repeat as best you can.
The question was the conversations we're having about the Rays project, the Rays baseball stadium and the adjacent development, and the amount of investment that's required from the city and how that plays with the streetcar extension or the cost. One, I will say that, to be clear, the Rays project from the city's perspective is $80 million of CIT, which is a sales tax. So we're taking $80 million of sales tax over 30 years, and getting from that $80 million, we're going to get $6 to $8 billion of construction in the city of Tampa. That's just construction for $80 million from the city's perspective. That is the 120 acres. They're going to rebuild Hillsborough College. We're going to get a cash dump, and this is what I think gets lost in this discussion. Because I'm only approaching this from a city of Tampa perspective. I'm not talking about Hillsborough County, I'm not talking about the state of Florida or any of these other issues. Just representing the city of Tampa, this project is totally contained within the city. We're putting $80 million in. Right off the bat, we're going to get $150 million from the state of Florida to rebuild Hillsborough College, the four-year college, into a modern campus. And right now, there's a lot of tens of millions of deferred maintenance that they need on that campus. So that's $150 million of construction in the city of Tampa, construction jobs and development in the city of Tampa. We're going to get tens of millions of dollars of transportation improvements from the state of Florida in the city of Tampa. There's going to be pedestrian bridges going over Del Mabry. I'll say something I'm probably not supposed to say out loud. We talk about what happened in Ybor City with pedestrian safety. I'm more worried about
what happens on Del Mabry with these stadium events with pedestrians gathering on the sidewalks with cars flying down Del Mabry. We need pedestrian bridges over Del Mabry Highway. That is a need, not a want. This project gets us those pedestrian bridges. On top of that, Hillsborough County is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into the city of Tampa. And on top of that, the Rays are going to invest 56% of the cost of the stadium. And by the way, the city of Tampa money is not going to a stadium. It's going to sidewalks, it's going to streets, it's going to bike lanes, it's going to roads, it's going to sewers, it's going to water lines. Our $80 million is going to infrastructure. And then on top of that, the Rays not only are going to spend 56% of this construction of the stadium in the city of Tampa, the other, $4 to $5 billion of development of hotels, restaurants, shops, other activities on that 120 acres is all going to be private money in the city of Tampa, generating jobs, generating economic opportunity, and taking 120 acres right now that doesn't generate any taxes because it's all tax-free, because it's all by the college, so you don't get ad valorem taxes. We're going to generate economic development, which is going to generate taxes that's going to go back and paying off what we're spending now. For the city of Tampa perspective, again, I'm not going to talk about Hillsborough, the state. I'll leave them up to justify it. From the city of Tampa perspective, this is an absolute no-brainer. We are getting a massive cash dump into the city of Tampa. The money that we're going to use for this is completely separate and apart. And I will say Brandon was a little bit more vague when he talked about that. The greater minds, we have plans on how we're going to get the money. We already know. We just have to solidify how the money's coming to do this. It's not in ink, but it's in really hard pencil of how we're going to make this thing work.
Sharon, you had your hand up also.
Brandon, could you talk a little bit about, so you mentioned that it goes up to $1 million at Councilman Clendenin said Columbus, so I'm just wondering where that is. But what is the consideration for it doubling back down as opposed to, let's say, connecting loop and going through more neighborhoods, right? To have like more of the full loop like you see in the city of San Diego or something like that, which, would hit, I was trying to count on how many neighborhoods, but it's quite a few if we were to do that in terms of the goal of the streetcar becoming a mechanism for everyday use for people who live here and not just for those who are visiting to get to key destinations.
So the question was, if I can summarize, you tell me if I'm doing a poor job of summarizing. The question was, why this route? Why not a loop? And why not doubling back through other neighborhoods? Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, so the way it's drawn right now, it doubles back, right? So we're doing two-way track, and there's enough track that you can get a parking like closer to completing the loop. So I'm curious about why we're not completing the loop, even though we're putting down quite a bit of track.
Right, yeah. Oh, and I guess you also mentioned like where the northern terminus is. We wanted to get as close to Columbus as practical. One of the reasons we decided that we needed to rethink the turnaround at Palm is that operationally, that's a bigger challenge than it was 8 years ago. Getting to Columbus itself, and again, to the point about taking lanes away and operating in mixed traffic at the signal, that's a little more complicated in the same ways that Palm was than Amelia was. Because the new lane repurposing guidance, maybe not even guidance, really the new lane repurposing statutes are for transit, the way they're written. This is going to at least initially have to operate in mixed traffic. Our current consultant has done some initial calculating to determine whether that's still going to operate well, but it will be a hard ballast and vehicles can drive on it as well. That's not the most comfortable arrangement, if you ask me, But it's the only way that we can get it moved forward.
That's on the state roads, correct?
So the statute reads the same whether it's a state road or a locally owned road. So I don't know what the reference is, but
Okay.
yes.
Is there another question?
Listening to the hearing, and I heard bonding or CRV $50. Somebody said that was the first time that was ever done. And I was concerned because I know when I went to the legislature, the CRAs were having for communities that was inside of the city of Tampa, that have some be able to have public dollars reinvested into our communities. So we definitely have to try that. Do you have any assurance at the state level that the CRA that would be impact, whose dollars would be impacted are going to get the extension that may not happen in that period of time, so that could be bonded for the reason.
So the question is about the raised development in Drew Park, and using CRA, the CRA money and bonding against the CRA. One, I will say that the agreement that we've reached thus far is a non-binding agreement, and there's a lot of details, including the CRA is a much more complicated issue, and I think before we get to definitive documents, all those questions will be answered. When you borrow money, you have to have, there are legal requirements. There's, when you go out for bonds, the bond market is very stringent about their requirements. It will work or it won't work. There's no wiggling around it. So anybody that scares you and says, oh, we've never done this before, it will either work or it won't work. And if it doesn't work, they'll have to find another opportunity. While I'm on the CRA and the raised part of it, I want to clarify because I don't think this came out very publicly. The CRA, what we've done through that agreement is we've partitioned off just the 120 acres, and the money that for that $100 million loan, the money only from that 120 acres is going towards repaying that loan. So basically, the development is paying for the development, and nobody else. So it will not affect the rest of the CRA. What will positively affect the rest of the CRA is the outflow. So the things that will come, the housing and the shops and restaurants that will come adjacent outside of that 120 acres will help generate TIF to help redevelop and help improve the quality of life for people that live there. But they won't be taxed, their taxes aren't going to go to pay back the loan. Only that development is going to pay that. And that's if this stands with the CRA. But again, that is part of the process that's still developed. We don't have definitive documents yet. We only have a tentative agreement, an MOU. So we'll see how that works out in the final documents when we make that decision point. But right now it looks like it's a win-win for also the people, the residents that live in Drew Park. The way it's structured right now, if it came up right now, it would be a do no harm to Drew Park and only positive benefit for the Drew Park residents.
Okay, thank you. Brandon, back on track.
All right. The next project that I wanted to talk about, past that. This, of course, is not all the way into your neighborhood, but it is a connection to what is already a low-stress bicycle facility within the neighborhood. So, again, we're talking again about another lane repurposing project, but this is Morgan Street through downtown. We have engaged in the statutorily required public engagement process. We've had 3 different public meetings and had positive feedback when we were able to go through those project concepts with those who came to those meetings. We anticipate this going to construction this fall, and then it should be within 6 weeks or so for completion. It will build a cycle track and, of course, resurface the roadway as well. It gets basically, I'll say, from Water Street up to the Marion Transit Facility, And then once you go underneath the interstate and up into the Heights, we'll add sharrows to that facility as well. Yes? No, it doesn't go quite that far north. So when you get, I think it's the block between Harrison and Fortune, we have these, it's brick, or there's partial brick actually, and it's real wide, and then it just kind of narrows way down as you get past the cemetery. I'm blanking on the name of the cemetery, but there's not sufficient width to actually reconfigure those lanes as you pass the transit facility and cross Scott Street. So no, that's outside the limits, but then of course, as with all of these, if there are incremental changes that make sense after the initial project, we're not going anywhere.
Sorry, I'm follow up to that. While outside, this is like my direct path to take my kids to Rampa. So
I believe it's going to be all night work, and of course they'll work around the event schedule. They're looking at probably late September to October, which coincides with the beginning of the hockey season, so we'll be mindful of the event schedule downtown and avoid it. I had a call with my team this morning, and the contractor that we're using, they said they have a crew that only works night work. A lot of it's like interstate work or for other agencies, so it should be all night. All right, next. So this one is part of our Safe Streets for All grant. I think it will probably be of interest to you in part because in some ways it's a continuation eastward of the Floribraska project. These are just concept plans, and honestly I think that we'll likely change some of the configuration as you get into Ybor. But this is the westernmost part of these concept plans. It is a continuation of the bike lanes from Floribraska through 21st Avenue, I will say at least to 15th, where we've got where the green spine comes, and that's the final segment being constructed, or that has been constructed of the green spine. To the east of 15th, our concept plans still show bike lanes on either side. There are competing interests, competing needs there that I think we might have to rethink, but getting it to 15th, I think is going to be a positive change to connect with probably our most well-used cycling facility in the city, which is the green spine. Yes, sir.
Real quick on orientation. Well, what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is
one going west.
Yeah. Yes. No, you asked about the orientation. This is one of the graphics that I had in mind when I gave my disclaimer that it might be hard to see. I'm happy to leave the hard copy of this, but what you're seeing on the screen, the far left is Nebraska. So the Floribraska project went just to the east of Nebraska. That the tie-in might look a little bit different from these concept plans, but the idea is to take what right now is a pretty big, like hashed out area in the center, reallocate those spaces, allow for the same number of travel lanes on this segment, but then also accommodate bikes meaningfully as you get between the Floribraska bike lanes and the green spine cycle track. This was one of the projects that was identified in our 2022 Safe Streets for All grant. Because it's a big suite of projects and because it is a federal grant and coordinating with them is a much higher touch exercise than the straightforward project that we might otherwise do, it's taken a little while for us to get to where we are. I anticipate construction on this sometime in 2028. I don't have an exact date on it, but we still have to as well go from concept plans through NEPA evaluation and final plan and construction. I didn't want to give it on the radio. So at least to 15th. There are a couple of other slides. It's like the concept plan is like 10 pages long, but I just took eastern edge, and then the next one is like the center. You can kind of see we're maintaining one through lane in each direction and turn lanes as appropriate, and then that's 15. This is the second I anticipate might change, but as the concept shows now, it takes it all the way to 21st, I believe. So this is, we still have final design to go. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about was also a Safe Streets for All grant project. It was a separate grant though. It was the grant that we were awarded the following year. The stringencies of this grant are a little higher, so we are actually right now still working through a grant agreement with the federal government for this project. But the intent of it, however it ends up fully being scoped and constructed, is to look at the Palm Avenue segment from Nebraska all the way over to 21st. And in particular, the 4-lane section through Ybor that it operates at a higher speed than we would prefer. It's part of our high injury network. We want to bring safety improvements to it. We're working through the scope with the federal government. This grant is actually a demonstration grant officially, as opposed to an implementation grant, and that's maybe way more in the weeds than I really need to go with you all. But that's why we can't just implement maybe what we fully would want to. We're working through exactly how we can best scope something that is acceptable to the federal government. I don't have a date on it because, again, we're still working through the grant agreement before we can start the design and construction. But it is coming. And then the last one that I have on the slides is the one that Chairman Clendenin mentioned. This also will be difficult to see, but it is the Ashley Drive Reconnecting Communities Grant Project. It is the north end of Ashley Drive. This is actually a fairly recent new concept that mirrors what we had put out before, but I think it's a little bit more refined. Basically what we're going to do, the Ashley Drive southbound ramp where you split off and get to Tampa, the bridge over that is coming down to grade. We are going to eliminate that split, and at roughly the same time, FDOT is going to add capacity for the right turn from Scott to Tampa, so that those people who are trying to get to Tampa have a place to go. And we also have a better connection east-west, basically from the river on the west of this area, down Laurel Street, into the downtown grid. Something that this is going to help enable is the redevelopment of the Army-Navy parcel and the Royal Regional lot. We are working, not my department, but as a city, we are working with a developer to build some affordable housing and to go vertical, where right now is just a mid-sized surface parking lot and a vacant building. So that will likely also go to construction in 2028, and we are again, trying to coordinate between the multiple interests, not competing interests, but multiple interests in this area. That's the last slide I had. Sorry if that was a marathon. I'm happy to answer any questions or to go deeper into some of the regional infrastructure accelerator that Chairman Clendenin mentioned. Yes, sir.
Before we go into the Q&A thing, it's 8:10. We ordinarily adjourn right about now. I'm certainly more than happy to entertain questions, and I'm sure Brandon and Alan would be happy to answer them, but just be aware that we're getting beyond our normal time scope. So I want to respect you all's time. That said, you
sure,
all good for
I can answer questions for sure. Yes, sir.
Sheldon?
I got a question on Central Avenue. When will that be done? Is that going to be under the interstates or Central?
Are you asking about the Central Avenue connection underneath I-275? Is it closed? I don't even know. Is it closed right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's because that's FDOT's, yeah, because that's part of the FDOT project. I may not have all the details, but I'd be happy to follow up with my counterpart at FDOT to find out for you. Okay. Sure, sure.
I have a statement and I have a question. My statement is Elmore Avenue, Brandon Avenue, along this east of Nebraska, have all been reduced to single lanes. And we're great. There's hardly any backup on. I think going to single lanes with the proper turn lanes is a great idea, and it works. My question is, channel side that's been closed for a couple of years. Will we ever get that back, or is that then given to the development?
So the question was about channel side, and you are correct, that is closed by the developer. The primary reason for closing that segment is the reconstruction of the grid where the roundabout is. They're taking out the roundabout, they're putting in traditional intersections. They are creating a straighter shot across the CSX tracks there. I'll have to follow up to find out the planned opening of that, but that is under the contractor and the developer's control.
Taryn?
Great. So, Central Avenue has some challenges. We didn't necessarily have challenges for the upgrades, but the upgrades themselves have presented challenges because of a lot of finger pointing related to whether it's the city's project or DOT's project, who ultimately is responsible. So the intersection upgrades, the crosswalks, the push buttons were definitely a welcome addition and something that the community was certainly looking for in terms of the safety components, especially having Tampa Heights Elementary, Columbus, and a number of new developments coming. So that's been great. The trouble is that Central Avenue, block by block, in the historic district, has been treated differently. So it has no continuity. We have speed bumps on one block, and we have chicanes that have now interrupted what is a beautiful brick street on another block. So this was an enormous, I think, misstep, especially because now we have beautiful DOT signs all over the concrete curves that are chicaning the street. So if you haven't seen it, I would ask you to please go look at it, because this was also something that was not brought to historic preservation and Dennis Hernandez within the city, and it should have been. And so as projects like this take place in the neighborhood, I think it's really important that we make sure that all departments that need to be engaged are engaged. And I know that DOT is ultimately responsible for the design of what got put there, but I have to say it's not a great change. And I've seen more near accidents since those curbs have been put in than what was happening on the street prior. And the other piece I would add is that because of the lack of coordination, we have seen businesses in the neighborhood impacted negatively. So due to too many road closures in the same locations or blocking of entrances, so we lost King State due to too long project timeframes, one being with the water department, the other mobility, and there was a big issue. And then right now, we've heard that Fancy Free, which is in the southern part of the neighborhood, is struggling because of people being able to access their neighborhood. I've also talked to some of the other small businesses in the neighborhood that have talked about road closures happening where back in December it was 7 Palm, we're both close to different parts, and it shrunk the amount of business that are small businesses. This was the Jameson Dojo. During one of what should have been their busiest months was one of their weakest because people couldn't get there. So making sure that our think is really important because Tampa Heights has worked really hard for the past 15 years to build that up. It's this community, and watching projects that are supposed to help improve the built environment actually start to negatively impact them, I think is a cautionary tale.
You are relieved you're trying to sum up. I will say, maybe the soundbite from that for me is you all are experiencing construction fatigue, and I totally understand that. We try our best to coordinate construction projects. There are lots of them going on, and so that is going to have some inherent challenges. But by all means, when you have concerns, please do share them with us.
It's not just the construction fatigue for that particular street. I live across the street from here. And we had a beautiful street. And I was at meetings, and I was supposed to say at FDOT, and I said, this is a brick street with no parking, and why would you put a bike lane in the middle of a brick street? And I mean, to me, it made absolutely no sense. The street was none of this has been an improvement. It was extremely difficult to get out driveways. People are driving on the wrong side of the street consistently because it's almost impossible to get through on the right side, you know. And now there's been a lot of buildings, so then one lane is even blocked. It was wonderful when Kika blocked it because they actually had people directing people the right way. Normally, there is no direction. One lane is totally blocked, and people are like on their own to try to make sure that nobody's going the other direction. Luckily, there haven't been problems because people have been very cognizant and going slow. But, you know, it's not safe, and it's become very ugly.
So I will say on
and
Central.
And the buildings were there like for about a year and a half. You think? Yeah.
The barrels.
Yeah, it was amazing. One day they just disappeared. I said, oh my God, they finally took them away. I think there was no reason to them.
No, I think Rick was sending emails, but
There was a lot of people behind the curtain on that.
Historic Central Avenue and treating every block extremely differently like this is a problem, right? We need to have continuity, and we don't now. Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
I will say on Central Avenue, we can keep that discussion going. One thing, you know, that I've experienced many times is that when a new project is implemented, there's a bit of an adjustment period. And so allowing for some adjustment before actually going out and trying to, you know, make modifications is generally best practice. That does not mean we can't make modifications. So just...
Brandon, what I would say though is that this one was like, this is a runaway train situation where a DOT traffic engineer made some big decisions without actually looking at the context of the neighborhood, understanding what the challenges were, because I talked to them. I asked them for the data. They didn't give it. I'm not sure they have it. And then they treated the next block over completely differently. So, you know, this isn't a patchwork place. We work really hard in the historic district to make sure it's not that. So I'm just disappointed in the outcome because the faith is not wrong. People are struggling getting out of the driveways, like because of where these are. So that's why I was asking you to take a look at it and actually see it, because
yeah, I've driven it. I haven't like watched people pulling in and out of driveways, admittedly.
Watch them implement it, like, and build it the way they measured where they put them in the middle of the night as we watched.
As we were woken up.
As we got woken up, like no one knew it was coming, and it was they did it in between the two hurricanes. It was literally the week in between Helene and Milton, in the middle of the night that they appeared. But they were using 2x4s for measurements and stuff. Like, I I come from architecture, so I'm used to construction. This was wild to me. But, so anyway, I just, the coordination, I just think really needs to be there.
Sure, and obviously, you know, Central and Ola were unique projects in terms of the way they were planned and delivered. So I don't anticipate other projects moving forward in the same way, but if there's something similar, then we absolutely will take lessons learned.
Okay, we need to bring this in for a landing in honor of your air traffic controller today. Ari, I saw your hand up. Is there something you can say or say quickly?
Very quickly, just a comment there, that I feel like calling the negative impact on businesses kind of an adjustment thing.
That's not what I'm saying.
Minimizing your problem.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
Do either of you have any closing comment? You just want to get out of Dodge now?
No, I'll say, you know, it's always difficult, and I think we always, especially council, are very cognizant of the impact this has. Every time we take up an issue, there's good, there's bad, you know, and different. I think we mourn the impact that it has, and I think there's been mistakes made in the past that we've really gone to bat. And I think, you know, Brandon is, how long have you been on duty now?
In my current spot?
Yeah, in your current spot.
Well, officially 4 months.
So 4 months. So, you know, this is something that we're moving through, and there have been mistakes in the past. We've seen it. We all witness it. I just whispered in his ear when you were talking about striping, because I've got an exact same example in front of my house that I can't get resolved. Can't back out without almost getting hit by cars, and all my neighbors, everybody knows it. But so it's mistakes that were made by, you know, predecessors and things that happened. We work through them one at a time. One thing I can promise you that, you know, Tampa's growth is going to continue. We're trying to make it as pain-free as possible. One of the things on the bike lanes, I know that our mobility department did a lot of criticism. Realize for years and years and years, Tampa appeared as one of the top 10. It was a top 10 list we did not want to be on for pedestrian and bicycle injuries and deaths. It was not safe to walk or bike in the city of Tampa. So that was a challenge that the city council and the mayor had to take on to try to resolve that issue. Are we getting everything right? No. Also know that as we move forward, mobility is changing. As I tell folks when we talk about all these bike lanes, why are you building all these bike lanes? I say, well, they're not building them for people that look like me. They're building them to look like my grandkids. You know, because with all these e-bikes and everything that's going, they're going to be using this technology. And there was a time when you used to have to build gas stations before we had a massive amount of cars. You had to build infrastructure. That's what we're doing right now. But everybody, I will say that for the most part, everybody is trying their best, whether it's the mayor's staff and Brandon's department. As I said when I introduced Brandon, he's a great partner and listens. And I know your council is trying to do their best. Do we get it right every single time? No, but when we find those mistakes, you bring them to us. We listen, we try to do better on the next projects. But I feel your pain, I feel the business's pain. We deal with it every day, and it's problematic, and we try to minimize it as best as we can. And I think Brandon talked about, you know, some of the projects they're doing at nighttime. You know, what he talked about flying in these beams. These are all things that we do try to mitigate. We mitigate the impact that the city of Tampa's growth and recreation. That's what we're doing, recreating the city right before our eyes. It's always going to have some impact. We try to fix it, try to do as best we can. Know that you got good people trying to do the best that they possibly can.
All right. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our agenda for tonight. Thank you all for hanging out. This was a lot, and remember that we were broadcasting on Zoom. There will be a recording of this meeting that will be posted. There's a lot of information that was shared tonight. You may want to go back through and review certain portions of it. That's all I got, unless there's something for the good of the order. See no hands up. Thank you much. We're adjourned.